wanna see what you gon' have to say when I switch your pot out on you. Let the egos play. Got my eyes on the prize now. I'm just trying to reel it in. She wanna play in the jungle with me. She wanna touch my skin. I've been down and dirty, mama. Come and grab my hand.
Hello and welcome to Conversations with Rev G here on WEMS Radio every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Rev G, and I'm here on Monday nights with spiritual conversations. I bring guests from different walks of life, from different perspectives, and we talk about spirituality. And we talk about spirituality from a practical perspective. How does it support you in your everyday life? How can spirituality be a part of your life that supports you moment by moment? What tools, what spiritual practices you could use to support you are key to what we bring to you on this show. So my guests, they all have different spiritual practices that they use. And I hope that by sharing their spiritual practices and their journeys, you will be inspired. Because my goal is to support you in finding joy and living your best life with grace and ease. And one of the ways I think that can be done is through using spiritual tools. We talk about a spiritual toolkit. What's in your personal spiritual toolkit? I can support you in creating that. I also talk about how we can get through this moment. It's the holiday season, and the holiday season is very, very different this year because we're used to being with family and everybody is kind of like staying with their same little groups. And it's a time when generally we are like really excited and a lot of joy. But this year, it may be a little hard to do that, but I'm encouraging everyone to find that bit of joy and enjoy this holiday season. At the time, also recognizing that people are depressed at this time. And hopefully we could reach out to those people and give them some joy. So tonight, I have some very special guests. I have Crystal Allen. She is a healthcare nurse. And I have Shaquille Robley, who is a journalist and a producer at HuffPost. They work together. They've created this fantastic organization that they work together with, and they both are NYU graduates. So we're going to talk tonight and have some real conversations around health and wellness and spirituality. If you want to find out more about me and see more of my information, you can find me on Instagram as Rev Grenetta and on Facebook as Reverend Grenetta Mason and on YouTube as Reverend Grenetta Mason. So let's get Shaquille and Crystal here and start this conversation. Hey guys.
Hello.
I'm excited to have you guys on the show tonight. And so what I think we could start by is just introducing yourselves and give people a little background on who you are. So let's go with Miss Crystal first.
Sure. So my name is Crystal, and I am currently a health tech nurse. And by that, I work virtually, and I also work out in the field, seeing patients depending on the week, depending on the day. Additionally, as Bernetta said, I am an NYU grad. And during my time at NYU, I actually found my wellness space. And by that, I mean I found different activities and people that poured into me. And I started really focusing on how I could grow in terms of just my self-identity and self-discovery. And so that led me to, of course, meet Shaquille, who became one of those person. He became a person who poured into my life, starting at NYU. And we actually founded a wellness blog together called Legacies of Gold.
Yay, that's exciting. I read a little bit about that. We'll get to talk about that a little bit more tonight. Shaquille,
Hi, I'm really excited to be here. The energy already feels amazing. But my name is Shaquille Orlando Ramblay. I come from Brooklyn, New York, and like Crystal, I also went to NYU. But at NYU, I studied media, culture, and communications because I always dreamed of being a storyteller, whether that was like videos or sharing my own stories, which led me to become a producer now at HuffPost. But in addition to producing, I have my own podcast at HuffPost now called That's That. It just came out and it's doing extremely, extremely well. But while at NYU, I kind of like met Crystal at a time in my life when I was going through a lot of changes and I was journeying and I felt like I was in valleys. And I feel like sometimes when you're going through valleys, you feel really alone in that experience, but I was not alone. And basically from there, we decided to create Legacies of Gold because if we realized that we were journeying and we needed spiritual tools and wellness tools, we imagined that there was a population of people who also needed the same resources. And that's how we founded Legacies of Gold.
Wow, that's really beautiful and great because I consider you guys millennials, right? So I mean, you are. I consider you. I mean, you are millennials, right? And what I mean is, I'm interested to understand how you approach spirituality, right? Because in this time, it's a space where we would like to find people, we would like to have more people using spiritual tools. So as millennials, it's interesting for me to see how to reach millennials, right? And you guys are doing it. So I think that's really great. One of the questions that I would like to ask you is, you guys are now at this point where you've created Legacies of Gold. Talk a little bit about your early spiritual life. Were you born in the church? Talk a little bit about your early spiritual life and then how you come to where you are now.
Sure, yeah. So I can start off. So I was not born in the church.
She was not born.
I was definitely exposed to church, but my family, I didn't grow up that religious. However, I found Christ around 16 while I was in high school. One of my friends actually brought me to her church, and it was an African church. And I was like, okay, I feel the spirit moving. I feel God here. Like this like foreign spiritual force. Like I really felt a spiritual connection, and I also felt community when I went there, and I felt people's love for me and God's love for me. So that was when I was in high school, and I actually started going to church on my own, not with my family. Like they would arrange to pick me up, and my family would be like, "You go to church again?" And I'm like, "I am."
Right.
And so I kind of started off my journey on my own, and of course with the help of community within church, and then transitioned into NYU. I had my own challenges with Christianity and understanding my relationship with God, and also just going through that transition from high school to college. And I felt very alone, kind of what Shaquille was talking about. I felt very lonely in that journey. I felt a bit lost. I didn't know which direction I should go into, especially when it came to spiritual practice. I mean, there was one point, I think I was a sophomore, junior, and I was just like, to hell with all of it. I can't.
Right.
I'm not trying to be spiritual. I'm not trying to be Christian. I don't want to do anything. And then, of course, God was like, no, that wouldn't last. And, God brought people into my life that helped me to grow. I was also able to reconcile my relationship with church and with Christianity. And also I got exposed to like Iyanla. I got exposed to different types of spirituality. And I basically found what worked for me at that time. I know I also did Momentum, which I kind of met you through Momentum.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And Momentum helped me to just build more confidence in myself and just, work on manifesting exactly what I wanted in life. So that was, my journey in like high school and college.
Yeah, that's interesting to see that you went on your own at 16. It's sort of like you knew there was something about it, right? So
I was taking that Q56. I was going to church on my phone.
that's cool. What about you, Shakira?
My story is very different. I was christened before I knew what that even was. I was an altar boy. Yeah, so basically, like, I grew up in a family of people who identified as Christians, and in my household, you had no choice but to go to church on Sunday for a very long time. And I think that was very, very drilled on me, and very like much kind of like, this is what we do and this is how it's going to be. And I think at a period of my time, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed, honestly, kind of like the community that came with church, because you have your family, you have your friends, but then you have your church family. So I think I enjoyed those things. But I'm a very, very proud Black queer man. Those identities mean so much to me. And I think for me, there came a time when I started to disconnect with Christianity because I felt torn between both identities. Like, do I identify with a Christian or do I identify as a queer man? And I feel like being queer is intrinsic to who I am. And I just went through this whole battle, this internal battle.
There was probably no real support either at church. They wanted to just take it. Yeah, right.
Zero support. So that being said, I think that I knew that God was real. So to me, I think that I got to a point when I was in college when I found people. I was going through a heartbreak, and my friend was like, "Read it, y'all." I'm not reading no damn Beyond Love, but I read Beyond Love.
In the meantime, that's in the meantime.
Yes, and I gave my copy to Crystal. She gave it to a friend, and it kind of started a wildfire.
Right.
After reading that book, I think I learned that spirituality could be defined on my terms, and it's my relationship with spirit. And that's when I had my aha moment. And now I read Buddhist texts. I read things from Taoism. I read things from Islam. I even read things in Christianity now. And I make sense of all of these things and develop my own personal relationship with spirit. And that's where I'm at now.
That's really, really great, because that speaks to me also, because after I studied all the different religions, then I created a new relationship with Christianity. After going through Buddhism, Hinduism, and looking at all of them, it really supported me in my relationship with Christianity. So that's interesting that that's how it happened for you also. That's really, really interesting. I know, Shaquille, that you say you're queer. You say a queer Black man, right? And I know you're queer Black. You know, it's like, right? Just saying that, right? And I know that you are really, really working in the LGBTQ community, right? So tell me, give me some examples of some of the things that you're doing in that community.
So I think that everyone has a role in activism, right? Even like, I think I was talking to Crystal at one point about, social media activism. And I'm like, people are staying their asses home when there's real work to be done. But then I realized everyone has their role. And I learned that my role is storytelling. So I try my best to find the most vulnerable voices and amplify their stories. And I've done that by highlighting stories about trans women being murdered at a volatile rate. I've done that by highlighting stories about queer superheroes who are bullied once, but then kind of internalized that energy and kind of like rechanneled it into becoming an icon and into kind of becoming someone who shows that being queer also symbolizes strength. So my work for the community consistently means telling the stories of the community.
That's beautiful. Right. That's beautiful. And highlighting those stories and having people aware of the story, and from a positive point of view, right? I mean, making them aware, but also shining a positive light on the community. I like that, right?
Yeah, because some people, they don't think they know a queer person, right? When they were trying to normalize the idea of being queer, they started to do these things like, your mailman is queer, your doctor is queer.
When you say queer, though, what does that mean? Explain that, because sometimes when we have this audience here, maybe they don't know what queer means, right? Is there a definition, you know?
Yes. So you can be straight and queer. Isn't that
Be straight and queer, right? Give us that one, right?
yeah. But to be a queer means to just be anything that is outside what it means to be straight and heteronormative. And heteronormative, I hate to use these big words, but
now just break it on down. Break it down. Okay, break it down.
But to be heteronormative means to be you're straight passing. You're just like a regular straight person by societal standards. Okay. Your clothing doesn't reflect that you are butch or more feminine. You are just basically what society would deem as a regular straight person. Okay. So to be queer means to be anyone who does not fall into regular and straight. That's the simple way of putting it. But to be queer is to be anything that stands outside of those identities. You can be a straight woman, but dressed like more masculine. So you identify as queer because of how you present. Or you could be queer and be gay, or queer and be bi, or queer and be questioning. Yes, it's just a really term. It's for everybody. It's like everybody come. You can be queer.
Right. It's interesting. It shifted because I think at one point there were negative connotations to being queer, and it probably because people didn't really understand it, right? And now that there's more light being shined on what it means, you know, because even for me, I started reading what is binary, what is non, you know, it was just so many new words, right? That were just being thrown, and you have to really do the research to really kind of say, all right, so I don't know what non-binary means, but let me try to figure out, you know, what it means, you know? So it's interesting to be able to have those conversations, though, which is what I like. Miss Crystal, we're going to come to you now, right? And what I find interesting is how did you get to healthcare and being a nurse?
Very good question. So, my path to nursing was not an easy one. I was very resistant during my time at NYU while I was studying to become a nurse. I also had a minor in media because I was interested in media. But I felt like NYU is like I felt like nursing was the path to go. It was stable. You know, I come from a Jamaican background and Guyanese background, and that was just one of the career options. So I was kind of pushed into that career because of that pressure to be stable coming out of college, right? And of course, I tried to have my minor in MCC, and I also did I interned at Ebony while I was also doing my clinicals at nursing. So I just had a lot going on during my undergrad time. But I always wanted to figure out a way that I could combine healthcare and wellness and also in nursing as well. So in my role now as a health tech nurse, which is fairly new. It's a fairly
it's a new term because right,
yes. And I didn't know about this. When I was at NYU, they were like, you're gonna work at the hospital, you're gonna make X amount of money, this is your path, you have to become an NP, this is how it goes. So I didn't even know what health tech really was. So I started learning about health tech on my own, gaining more exposure through certain events and certain people. And I find myself now being very grateful that I was persistent with thinking outside of the box and not being afraid to step outside the box, because I definitely feel like with certain vocational careers, they could really try to put you in a box.
Because you were going from registered nurse to LPN to they had the whole setup for you, right? And you're
exactly. And now people ask me, and my friends ask me okay, what do you do as a virtual nurse right now? And right now I work with marginalized communities, and I've always had a heart for marginalized communities, specifically the Black community, because of my background, because of what I saw my grandmother go through, and also my parents now, there's a lot of health disparities within our community. So I'm very grateful that I get to play a role in working towards just a better a health outcome for marginalized people. So right now I work with Black and Brown communities, specifically in Brooklyn, and I love the community that I work with. Of course, there are some challenges with nursing, of course, because sometimes I always feel like, you know, we're like the underdogs where not enough credit is given or not enough benefits, or like sometimes I've had a lot of moments where I felt like I wasn't appreciated in my career. So it's just like, getting to that point of just figuring out how to work through those challenges.
Well, with COVID, how has that impacted you? So now you're a virtual nurse? I'm
not fully virtual. So I do about like half and half.
Oh, okay. You're doing both.
I work virtually some days, and then some days I go in to actually see my patients in their home. Okay. What does the tech part mean? What you gotta? So it's a health tech company. So we have our own built-in system. It's called like an EMR system, which is a health exchange system where we basically have like a COVID tracker. We have different data tools that we use in order to track patient outcomes. So it's new. It's a relatively new company, and I've wanted to enter health tech for some time, and I actually got the job right before COVID hit. And I lost the job. They were like, actually, there's a hold right now on hiring RNs.
Oh, okay. So you got it now.
Right. Now yes, I'm in the position, and I'm just looking to grow within health tech.
Okay, but that's really interesting. And that's an interesting point you make about nurses. And at this time, we need so many of them, right? And to be discouraged about it and not getting paid for the services is pretty hard, because it's like with COVID right now, nurses are really, really important, you know. So I appreciate the work that you're doing with that. We want to transition into tell me about Legacies of Gold. Yes, and you can go to Kira, talk about it. Tell us about it. As I read, you know, it was like what I read about it is you want to have people of color, right? Which is interesting. The concept of bringing it into the community. I think that's what Crystal's all about, also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we named the website Legacies of Gold because we wanted to remind Black and Brown people that they come from gold. And to me, gold has consistently symbolized greatness and opulence. And I believe that we live in a culture that consistently reminds us that that makes us feel like we are not from gold and that we are not great. So therefore, we wanted to create a community for people to kind of, if you're going through a heartbreak, if you're going through depression, if you're anxious, we have people who are not journalists, people who are our friends, people who went to NYU, people who we met in life, write about their struggles to kind of show that we are all battling something.
And so you guys come together and as a community, you guys hang out and write, or you share, you said?
So basically what we would do is we would tell people, like, for example, let's say I had a conversation with Crystal and she says, right now I am going through anxiety. I feel a little bit anxious in my life. So I'm like, how about you write about that? And sometimes in writing about that, people find that when they write about their struggles, they're able to help someone else. Or if Crystal was telling me a story about something she was dealing with at one point and she's overcome it, write about overcoming it so that we can use that to kind of help other people. And that's what it's become, a place where people can write about something they've been through, something they think they have some type of knowledge on. No experts. We don't have experts.
Right.
Just people sharing their struggles, and we've kind of formulated community.
And I guess that goes with the storytelling part, right? Also, right? It's like telling your story, writing your story, right? I did look at the website, and a couple of things popped out for me when you talked about self-discovery and self-care. You're doing that through the writing. Is that the part that you're supporting people in discovering who they are and self-care through the writing?
Yeah, I mean, we really encourage putting pen to paper and expressing yourself in an authentic way. That's what we really wanted contributors to do. And also, a lot of the times it was people that were part of our communities and other people who were reading, other viewers, they were part of those same communities. So it's kind of like, oh, wow, this person went through this or that person went through this. Like, you wouldn't know, right? Because sometimes the only image you have of people are their social media or, you know, when you just pass them by, say like when we were at NYU in the hallways or going to a class. So I feel like it was very healing for people to see other people's journeys and how they healed during that journey.
All right, that's interesting too, because we do speak a lot about healing and how we can support people in healing. What comes to mind for me right now also is in the mental health space. Right now, with everything that's going on, there are a lot of people who are struggling with mental health. And in our communities, we don't necessarily talk about it as much. And we need to bring it to the forefront and talk about, you know, our mental health and getting support for it, right? As a millennial, how have you guys addressed your millennial community around the mental health issues? Have you done any work like that?
I think that the beautiful thing is Crystal and I have been able to cultivate a community of wellness lovers and mental health enthusiasts. And how we've done that by kind of like, I think now the understanding is spirituality isn't always sexy, but it's always necessary. And what I mean by that is like doing this work is not always fun. And Crystal and I struggle with it also. So I think that what we've been able to do through the word of mouth and through simply using Instagram and social media tools and by highlighting what we're interested in, which tends to be wellness stuff, we've been able to kind of like pull people along and grab people in, whether that's by Crystal's yoga's event or whether that's by some of my YouTube videos. We are now just grabbing people on and being like, you know what? You don't have to, let's say, pray every single day, but how about try meditation? How about try yoga? How about try going for a walk and interacting with nature? And those conversations are really, 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 really beneficial.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, creating a spiritual practice. And I talk about what's in your spiritual toolkit, right? What spiritual practices are your go-to practices? And different things work at different times, because I've done journaling, meditation, listening to Abraham Hicks, a lot of different things, but at different times, different practices work, right? And also, we talk about it's personal though. What works for you may not necessarily be Crystal's go-to thing, right? And in exposing people to the different practices is what we try to do. And I think your goal is in alignment with what I'm trying to do, because when I looked, I was like, oh, you had everything on there: laughter and love and appreciation. I was like, all the words jumped out, right? To me, as to, you know, what you guys are trying to create here, right? So talk about Crystal, either one of you can talk about I saw something where you do like sip and stretch and yoga.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the activities that you do to support people in their wellness.
Yeah, sure. So last year, I did co-found a yoga business called Sip and Stretch.
Oh, okay. That's the name of the business. Oh, that's interesting, because I thought it was two different things, right?
Well, Sip and Stretch, it's under Legacies of Gold as well.
Right, okay.
Yes, it is called Sip and Stretch. And the purpose of Sip and Stretch is basically to cultivate a space of wellness, fun, laughter, all the things you were listing.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that through like wine, having wine, coffee, tea, while practicing yoga, and just making it a space where everyone can be comfortable, right? Making it a little bit more loose, funky, fun, because I think sometimes people can feel intimidated by yoga.
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand, because I remember my first experience with yoga. It was Yoga to the People by NYU, and it's awesome because it is a donation-based studio, but it was white. It was just like barely any people of color. There was a Black teacher, none of that. So it was a different space. So on top of it being a different type of activity for my body, it was also a different type of space where I didn't feel necessarily a part of the group, or I wasn't the majority. So I really wanted to create a space where Black and brown people and anybody can be comfortable in that space. And I just wanted to, again, like amplify Black and brown voices within the yoga practice and just make it accessible. So recently I've been doing some work. I do like virtual sessions, and that's been a bit challenging because I'm looking at a black screen, which is much different than actually being in a yoga studio. And like Shaquille has done events as well. And he was like the bartender with the wine. Everybody's having a good time. I was able to make adjustments with different positions. And now it's almost like, I feel so disattached. So because of the black screens and because it is virtual now, that I'm trying to figure out a way where there can be some type of balance, where the energy is still there and I'm able to create that space and still connect with people during sessions.
Yeah, because everything is so virtual, and people online doing Zoom and doing all kinds of things. Doing online with everything. And it is interesting to think how to create that space, right, for people through the virtual as a teacher. Hopefully we could get out again. I don't know how soon though,
Not very soon. I don't think so.
I'm
hoping to take advantage of virtual spaces.
Right. Shakira, I know that you were talking about social justice, right? And you were saying that everybody could be an advocate, right? Can you talk about some of the things that you've done? I know we've had the whole uprising recently, right? With all the killings. It seems like we're not hearing so much about it anymore, but it's still there, I don't know. What is your sense of what's going on?
Yeah, when the protests happened, when everything happened, when Black Lives Matter, the movement kind of resurfaced, I started protesting in the streets with some friends. And I think that what people need to understand is that everyone has a role at a protest as well. I went to some bike riding protests, which was people coming together on bikes and taking over bridges just to spread awareness about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. In addition to that, I think that because of, unfortunately, the unfortunate deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and so many more, that's kind of what led to the development of the podcast that I now work on, and that's that. We felt like in high media, there was no spaces for Black people to just talk and be themselves. We wanted to create a cookout, a living room where you feel like you could just talk and have conversations and be yourself. And that unfortunately those things kind of led to that because Black people were having so much conversations. And I felt like I wanted to create another space or participate in creating another space where we could continue those conversations to kind of, one, spread awareness, and two, to grow, and three, to heal.
So that's what that is. So it's a space. Oh, okay. I was going to come to that next. So that's the space where you're bringing people together.
Yeah, it's the living room. It's the cookout, right? In the living room, you talk about everything. Everything flies. At the cookout, somebody might say something crazy. You'll look at them, but they'll still get a plate, So we just really wanted to create that space. And I think that we're doing so successfully.
Okay, great. That's beautiful. Crystal, what about you?
So, in terms of just to piggyback off of what Shaquille was alluding to earlier, when he mentioned everybody has a different role in activism, during that time, it was a lot of pain. All of us, we were experiencing pain, expected to work simultaneously.
Yeah.
And it was a challenging time. Also, I wasn't in New York at the time. I was in Pennsylvania with my parents. And so I felt like, oh man, I can't go protest. And I felt like that's the only way I can contribute. I have to protest. And I see my friends on Instagram going to protest, and I just felt like I wanted to be a part of that. And I actually did a yoga event where we donated the proceeds to a foundation that was paying like bail bonds and just helping people that were being wrongfully arrested and everything like that, all the protesters. So we actually donated money towards that. And we hosted a space where we had some healing time. And that was very therapeutic for me at that time because there was just a lot of pain going on. We weren't talking about it at work. My coworkers were predominantly white, and it was very awkward because we're like kikiing about somebody's nails, or I don't know.
Right, you wanted to talk about something real. Yeah.
Exactly. They talking about their Zoom backgrounds and Connecticut somewhere, and I'm just like, oh man, like, we have like brothers and sisters that are dying. So I just, again, agree with that statement that everyone has their own form of activism. And it isn't always protesting. Of course, that's needed, but there's other ways that we can contribute to this movement.
Yeah. What do you see as next? What are you guys seeing happening on the street? I say, what's happening on the street now? What are you guys seeing in your communities, in your circles? What's next? I get you're doing the talking, right?
Yeah.
That's a good thing because people do need to release, and that healing space is so needed. So I see that. What do you guys see as next? It's and I could talk a lot too. What I was thinking about was that how, it's like so in our face, how things are just like right there, and then all of a sudden it's dead. Where is it? What's going on now? Right? Kind of, and that's because it's just not in the media. I know things are going on, right? And I know things are still happening. Are we just focused on Georgia? I mean, you see how the media, I always look at the media and say it dictates what we think, where we go. I have to switch back and forth because you can't catch me. Right? It feels like you're not going to tell me how to think, so give me all the information so I can figure out what I want to say, right? But anyway, what do you guys think? What's next for us?
I think that Generation Z is the generation that's going to continue to shape the world. They are the most radical. They are the most, I don't care. This is how it needs to be. They want now. They want things done quickly. And I'm really proud of that generation. And I think that we're going to see a major shift, to be honest. I think that politically, we're starting to see it with some of our politicians, AOC, Jamal Bowman. We're seeing a lot more politicians who are a little bit more on the left-leaning side. So I think we're going to continue to see more of that. And I think that we're going to continue to see more acceptance. And that's what I think is going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off of what Shaq was saying, I totally agree. I think Gen Z is bringing it. If you look at the elections in Georgia and all the early voting that's occurred, they're bringing it. So, and they're becoming very exposed and catching on to what's happening, especially because of social media. And that's why I do think social media activism is important too, because it helps us to stay informed. Because I'm not going to lie, like, one of my big like news sources is the Shade Room. A lot to different social media platforms. So that's what Gen Z is looking at as well. They're looking at different celebrities and different Instagram accounts that are probably related more so to pop culture, but then they also tackle issues that are related to Black and Brown communities. So I think that in the future, they're definitely going to push harder than previous generations.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be reconciliation.
Mm-hmm. What I will say, though, I would say that America has a very uncomfortable relationship with racism, homophobia, misogyny. And I think because those things are so woven into the fabric and the DNA of the country, there's a lot of work to be done. But there are always going to be voices who continue to advocate for the necessary work that we all have to do to eradicate those systems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear about the Gen Zs. I'm just getting with the millennials, right? So now you have flipped me, and now I gotta go find about some Gen Zs now, right?
They're coming.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you. Yeah, one of my little sisters, she's 17. One of her friends was actually arrested protesting. And you know, they're becoming much more aware of how, you know, policies affect them. So I think it's remarkable.
And we have also take into account they grew up in a very interesting time. They were alive to see the death of Trayvon Martin. They were alive to see Barack Obama as their first president. So this is informing them in a way that no generation has ever been informed before. They're alive to witness LGBTQ marriage. So they're just, they're on a whole other level.
Yeah, that is true. You know, when you think about the differences, you know, and the things that they have to deal with, right? Like you said, they have to deal with the LGBTQ. They have to deal with everything that's going on, the racism, and they have to make a difference, because even if we look at the political climate and they're watching and they're like, oh, hell no, right? What, right? So to make that change and have an impact, right, is what you guys say, it's what they are doing, right? When we talk about, so I think the point I want to think about right now, when I think about spirituality and millennial group, right? So spirituality, when you talk about it, it's not so much as religion and going to church. It's this whole new concept, not new, but this way of being, let's say. It's a whole way of being, right? That is emerging and that people are embracing, I would say, because they are seeing that praying and meditating and all of those spiritual practices can really support them. And I think there was, like, before, wrapped around religion, you were kind of rejected, right? But now that you take that religion off of it and say, oh, Judaism, Hinduism, all of those religions are okay, right? Then you can find yourself finding practices that support you. What would you say are your spiritual practice? What would be in your spiritual toolkit, Shaquille? What kind of things would be in your spiritual toolkit?
Number one, Iyanla taught me that there's three forms of prayer: help me now, and thank you.
So yeah, I mean, I know I heard y'all call Crystal's name a lot, but I know she is the Iyanla girl, right?
Yes.
Let me find a book by her. I was like, Lord, Crystal, you got me looking up a book, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say in addition to that is when my soul needs nourishment, I automatically call one of my soulmates, because sometimes there are people in this world who can speak to your soul and soothe it. In addition to soothing the soul, meditation and prayer, because I was taught that prayer is how you speak to God and meditation is how God speaks back to you. So I take all those tools. And if I'm being completely honest, I found myself this year with COVID and everything distancing. I thought that I was distancing myself from spirituality, but then I realized through yoga, spirit was pulling me back in. So I wasn't distancing myself. It just was coming in a new form. So that's what's in my toolkit. Those are my little, keep it in my purse, you know?
Exactly. You know, I've also, in talking to people, you write, and writing also can be very, very
yes.
your practice, right?
Yeah, I journal. I like to journal a lot more, but something I do is I write, and Crystal knows this very well. If I'm ever in emotional pain, I always write a poem. I always write, especially like with romance, I always decide to write a poem because something about words and writing them and putting them to paper, it heals me. So I definitely write down my goals to like look back at them and see like how far I've come to witness growth and to observe growth.
That's beautiful. What about you, Miss Crystal? What's in your spiritual toolkit? We create these personal spiritual toolkits, right?
Yes, we do. And I love my spiritual toolkit. And to tell the truth, I need to pick some tools back up. So yes, I mean, of course, like COVID has brought many challenges for me personally when it comes to a daily practice and just being disciplined and having routine. Because I do think with spirituality comes some form of discipline / dedication, however you want to use it. It's a commitment to your higher self and to God, right? So depending on the person. So for me, like prior to COVID, I had my therapy every other week. I had my yoga practice that I was going to and also doing at home. I was journaling on the train while I was going to work. So I had this like ingrained in me. So when COVID happened, it kind of just shook everything up. So now, like I said, I have the toolkit, but I need to use the tools more. And like Shaq was saying, like spirit is continuously pulling me back and God is continuously speaking to me. I definitely started watching sermons more as COVID happened. And that has brought me like a deeper understanding of, how important faith is and just assessing where my level of faith is and what shakes it up, right? Because I always think like no problem is too big for God. And I think sometimes it can be challenging because I think of like different issues I have, like family issues, grad school issues, work issues. And I'm like, dang, this problem is so small. Like God has me through this problem. And I think it's just holding on to that, even during COVID, during like these trying times. Like I remember I was working in the beginning of COVID and I was going into work and everybody was home. And I'm just like, well, why me? Why do I have to be working? Why do I have to go in? Of course, it's my occupation. I'm a nurse. But at the same time, it was like, okay, this is what God is prepping you for. Like, hold on to that faith that you have. And I feel like that's been what I've been working on. And like I said, like I definitely want to utilize my tools more. I used to have a therapist every other week. I lost my therapist because, health insurance ages you out and they're like, well, bye-bye, you're getting too old. So the same coverage. So I switched health insurance, which caused me to lose my therapist. And I haven't had a therapist for quite some time now. And that's definitely been affecting me because that was a major part of my spiritual toolbox, right? So
that's what I was going to talk about. During COVID, some of the things that have come up. So you've been able to not have your therapist during COVID. What did you use? Because did you find that COVID kind of like had you down, or were you able to be creative? How did you come out of it? What helped you and supported you?
Yeah. I mean, initially I was very creative. I was doing my yoga videos. I was finding ways to meet up with my friends, and it definitely got me down. I mean, I saw a lot of challenges at that time as a nurse, and especially with my friends and what they were going through. So it was like, it was a somber time. But I was able to see the light as well. And God definitely sent his blessings. Like I found love during COVID. Yes. And my partner and I, we actually like speak about our faith. We have our time on Sundays where we commit that time to God. So that's been very helpful for me and encouraging for me. Also with some of my close girlfriends, we started watching sermons together on Sunday. I know that I had different yoga events with people to create community and just like have some fun. So I've been figuring out ways to feed myself spiritually. But of course, I do think that having a therapist is beneficial. And as soon as January 1st comes and I get my new health insurance, I'm looking for a new therapist.
I think therapy is really great too. I think it's something that we all can use some support. And it's really about talking. It's really about being able to express and not feel judged, being able to say what it is and have somebody who could give you some direction or some support around clearing it up, moving on in that way. So I think that therapy can really work. And there are many other ways too that can work. It just depends. I just think therapy can be really productive.
I agree.
What about you and the whole COVID situation for you, Shakira?
For
How are you there with COVID and how has it impacted your world? And what have you been doing? Have you been stifled or have you been muted or you've been...
I would say that in the beginning, COVID was really hard for me because I'm very much a social butterfly. I love to go out. I'm never home. I'm always out. I'm always having a good time. So it was really difficult for me to like not be able to go out. But I think when you're not able to do something, it was forcing me to kind of look inward. And it was kind of forcing me to relax. And it was kind of forcing me to reconnect with community. I always say, if I loved you, I made sure we spoke at least one time during lockdown, and to kind of like resurface and to re-stimulate relationships that probably were not stimulated before COVID. It was beautiful. In addition to that, Crystal is the yogi in the friendship. She's been trying to get me to do yoga for a very long time, but forever. So I think that something about being home forced me to kind of like try to practice and understanding the different forms of the practice. There's vinyasa flow. In addition to vinyasa flow, there's flows for strength. And I kind of started to explore the different flows and understanding that yoga is the connection between body, spirit, and mind. And something about that just kind of like is so beautiful to me. So I think in the beginning, COVID froze me, but I think now it's kind of like I got my Wonder Woman bracelets on and I'm like fighting COVID and I'm trying to figure out like, how do I keep going even in a pandemic? And I think I figured it out.
That's beautiful. I also, COVID, as we said, it's been really, really hard. And we could talk about all of the bad parts, all of the heartache, the sadness, and all of that. But I also like to talk about the benefits, not, making the things that happen, minimizing them at all, but just think about what COVID gave you being this time. Like you said, you were running, but then you had to sit down. And what did that look like, to have to sit down? And I think about my family connection that happened during COVID, right? That's one of the things that really I'm excited about. I created like a family group. We did a family reunion on Zoom. We're doing a family Christmas party with texting. So there was that family connection that happened during COVID. So I also like to think about the blessings. What happened during this time? We can point out the 10 things that didn't go quite the way we wanted to, but there's probably 10 things that worked out really well,
Yeah.
So I encourage you guys to find that joy. Get that therapist, right? No. That yoga. Keep doing those practices that support mind, body, and spirit. And that's what I saw in everything you guys are doing. You're looking at it from mind, body, and spirit, which is so beautiful. We're going to wrap up, but I want to give each one of you a chance to talk about what's next for you, how people can find you, and then we'll be done, right?
Crystal.
Okay, I will go.
All right, what's next for you?
So, next steps for me, again, I am trying to broaden my horizons when it comes to COVID and working as a nurse during COVID. And also I want to grow in health tech. So I'm going to look for different programs that can help me grow, whether that's grad school, whether that's different certifications. And also on top of that, I want to commit to building my yoga brand even more, and also building Legacies of Gold as well, because I feel like, honestly, it's been hard for us to like post, and the motivation, it's been lacking. And I'm just trying to find my source of motivation, as well as I know like Shaq is as well.
Yeah.
So it's just working on that. And also, like you said, finding my therapist. That's a tangible next step. And then, growing Sip and Stretch, growing Legacies of Gold, and growing in faith and with my loved ones and my community, and just filtering out the noise and focusing in on what truly matters, which is, like you said, peace to mind, body, and spirit, right? So
congratulations on your new. I got to hear more about this new partner after.
Oh, yeah.
And what about you, Shaquille?
I will say for me that COVID really taught me that I am extremely powerful. And there's been a couple of things that I've always wanted to do, but I think that before I was stifled, I was afraid, and now I kind of like am a lot more fearless. So I have a YouTube series. I just released the episode last Thursday. We're releasing another episode this Thursday at 6:00, and it's gonna be good. And I think it's so important to have something for yourself, and that's what this time has taught me too. You could work for a corporation, you could work for an institution, but have that one thing that no one can take away from you. So I'm definitely gonna be growing that. And I really, really, really want to go every single day of 2021 with doing yoga, like every single day doing it, to kind of like make sure that I really develop the practice. And like, I realized this year I've also been really addicted to fitness. As Crystal, I go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week, but that taught me that I was really concerned about my physical body, but I need to like redirect and be more concerned about my spirit, because the spirit is more. So yoga is the way of being fit and also kind of engaging with spirit. So I'm going to make sure I do yoga every single day. I'm going to make sure that I nourish and water this series and continue to develop a community where I kind of showcase to people that through Legacies of Gold that spirituality is necessary. It's not always pretty. It's hardly ever fun. It can be.
But the laughter one, laughter yoga, right? You guys should do laughter yoga.
I thought about that. Yes.
Yoga. The laughter yoga. And that will be the fun part of it. Right?
And that's exactly what I want to keep doing. Finding the fun in the midst of all the crazy.
Yes, that's me. The fun and the joy. Wow. Thank you guys for this has been a great, great conversation. And thank you for coming on the show. And we'll definitely be in touch. I'll be looking and following you guys because I want to know more about the Gen Zs and see what they're talking about spirituality. So thank you guys and have a great, great day. And I will see you later.
Granada.
Bye. Thank you for being here tonight with Conversations with Reverend G. I'm here every Monday night on WEMS Radio from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. I'm supporting you in finding joy and living your best life with grace and ease. Happy holidays. It's the holiday season. So I'm sending out holiday greetings of peace and joy and love